Captain Jin-Ho stared at the flickering screens on his ship's bridge. Another boring day patrolling the empty space near the galaxy's edge. His crew of 12 had been out here for weeks, checking on mining stations and making sure pirates weren't causing trouble. Nothing exciting ever happened in this forgotten corner of space. "Captain, we're picking up something strange," called out Hyojin from her position at the communications console. Her voice carried a hint of excitement that made Jin-Ho look up from his coffee. "What kind of strange?" he asked, walking over to peer at her screen. "It's a distress signal, but the pattern is completely unknown. Not human, not from any of the allied species we know about." Hyojin adjusted her headset and frowned. "The signal is weak and getting weaker. Whatever it is, it's dying fast." Jin-Ho felt his pulse quicken. First contact with a new species was every space captain's dream, but it was also incredibly dangerous. Earth Command had strict rules about unknown contacts. The safe thing would be to report it and wait for specialists to arrive. "Sir, I'm reading debris on the scanner," reported Min Su from the navigation station. "Looks like a small ship, maybe. A scout vessel. It's badly damaged and losing atmosphere." Jin-Ho looked around at his crew. They were all young, eager, and trusted him completely. He'd served in the Earth Navy for 15 years and had never encountered anything like this. His training told him to follow protocol, but his conscience told him something different. "If there's someone alive in that wreck, they'll be dead before help arrives," he said quietly. "Hyojin, how long would it take for a rescue team to get here?" "At least 3 days, Captain. Maybe more." Jin-Ho made his decision. "Min Su, set course. For that debris field, full speed." "But, sir, the regulations clearly state—" "I know what they state," Jin-Ho interrupted. "But I also know what's right. We're not leaving someone to die in the vacuum of space." 20 minutes later, they found the wreckage. The alien ship was unlike anything in their databases. It looked almost organic, with smooth curves and a surface that seemed to shimmer even in the harsh light of space. A large hole in its side was sealed with some kind of emergency foam. "Life signs?" Jin-Ho asked. "Faint but present. One occupant, barely alive." Jin-Ho suited up and led the rescue team himself. Inside the alien vessel, they found her. The being looked surprisingly human-like, but with pale blue skin and silver hair that seemed to move on its own. She was unconscious and bleeding from several wounds. "Careful," warned Taimin, the ship's security officer. "We don't know anything about this species." Back on their ship, Jin-Ho personally tended to the alien's injuries in the medical bay. Her wounds were serious but not fatal. As he cleaned and bandaged them, she suddenly opened her eyes. They were completely black, like staring into deep space. The alien girl looked directly at Jin-Ho and he felt something strange in his mind. It was like someone was trying to push thoughts into his head, telling him to kneel, to obey, to serve. The mental pressure was intense and uncomfortable. But Jin-Ho just blinked and continued wrapping her wounded arm. "Are you feeling better?" he asked gently. "You were pretty badly hurt." The alien's eyes went wide with shock. She tried again, and Jin-Ho felt that same weird pushing sensation in his brain. This time, he realized what was happening. She was trying to control his mind, just like the stories said some alien species could do. "I'm Yuna," she whispered, her voice filled with confusion and fear. "Why aren't you obeying me?" Jin-Ho pulled up a chair beside the medical bed, where Yuna lay recovering. Her black eyes followed his every movement, still wide with disbelief. She kept touching her forehead as if something was broken inside her head. "I don't understand," she whispered. "My mind touch has never failed before. Not once in my entire life." "Mind touch?" Jin-Ho asked, genuinely curious. "Is that what you were trying to do to me?" Yuna nodded slowly. "All Veltar are born with the gift. We can reach into other minds, make them see what we want them to see, make them do what we command. It's how we've ruled our empire for thousands of years." She looked down at her hands. "But with you, it's like trying to grab smoke. I can't find anything to hold on to." Jin-Ho scratched his head. "Well, that's interesting. I just felt like someone was trying to give me a really bad headache." "You felt it but didn't obey." Yuna's voice cracked with something that sounded like fear. "That's impossible. Even the strongest minds eventually break under Veltar control." "Maybe human minds work differently," Jin-Ho suggested with a shrug. We're probably just wired wrong, or something. Yuna sat up straighter in the bed, wincing from her injuries. Her expression became very serious, almost formal. Human Jinho, I must tell you something important about my people's laws. Just call me Jinho, and sure, go ahead. When a Veltar's mental powers completely fail against another being, it means we are weak, defective. According to the ancient laws written by our first emperor, we must serve that being for the rest of our lives as punishment for our failure. Jinho blinked several times. I'm sorry, what now? I am bound to you by blood and law. You are my master now, and I am your servant until death. Yuna bowed her head. I know you will probably use me as a weapon against my own people, or force me to reveal military secrets. Most species would. Jinho stared at her for a long moment, then started laughing. Not mean laughter, but the kind you hear when someone tells you something so crazy you can't believe it's real. Yuna, I think there's been a huge misunderstanding here. There is no misunderstanding. The law is clear. Look, Jinho interrupted gently, I don't know much about your laws, and I definitely don't want a servant. I was just trying to help someone who was hurt. He stood up and walked to the small food dispenser in the corner of the medical bay. Speaking of which, when's the last time you ate something? You've been unconscious for almost 8 hours. Yuna watched him in complete confusion as he programmed the machine to produce a simple meal. I don't understand what you're doing. Making you some food. Nothing fancy, just some rice and vegetables. I don't know what Veltar usually eat, but this should be safe enough. He brought the tray over and set it on the bedside table. Here you go. Yuna stared at the food like it might explode. Why are you feeding me? Because you're hungry, Jinho said, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world, and because you're hurt and need to get your strength back. But I'm your property now, your weapon. Shouldn't you be demanding that I contact my fleet and surrender them to you, or forcing me to reveal our military weaknesses? Jinho pulled his chair closer and sat down again. Yuna, I need you to listen to me very carefully. I don't want to own you. I don't want you to be my weapon. I don't even want your military secrets. He pointed at the food. I just want to make sure you're okay and help you figure out how to get home safely. For the first time since waking up, Yuna looked truly lost. In her entire life, she had never met anyone who didn't immediately try to use power over others when they had the chance. Over the next few days, Yuna found herself constantly surprised by the humans aboard Jinho's ship. Hye-Jin, the ship's medic, checked on her wounds twice daily with a gentle touch and warm smile. What puzzled Yuna most was that Hye-Jin never tried to establish dominance or show superiority, even though she clearly had more medical knowledge. How do you determine rank among your crew? Yuna asked during one of these checkups. Hye-Jin paused while changing Yuna's bandages. What do you mean? In Veltar society, the strongest mind controls all others. The weak serve the strong. It's natural order. Yuna winced as Hye-Jin cleaned a particularly deep cut. But I can't sense any mental dominance happening here. How do you know who's in charge? Well, Jinho is our captain, so he makes the final decisions, Hye-Jin explained. But we all have our specialties. When it comes to medical stuff, he listens to me. When it's about the engines, we ask Minsu. Everyone contributes what they're good at. Yuna frowned. But what if someone disagrees with the captain? What if they refuse to obey? Then we talk about it. Maybe they have a point we hadn't considered. Hye-Jin finished the bandage and smiled. Jinho's not perfect. None of us are. That's why we work as a team. This concept was so foreign to Yuna that she couldn't sleep that night. In her world, questioning a superior meant death or mental conditioning, until you became a mindless drone. The idea that a leader would actually want to hear different opinions seemed impossible. The next day, Minsu showed her around the ship's engine room. The young engineer was clearly excited to have someone new to talk to about his work. This is the main fusion reactor, he said proudly, pointing to a humming cylinder covered in displays. She's not the newest model, but I've modified her to run 15% more efficiently than factory specifications. You modified it without permission? Yuna asked, expecting to hear about severe punishment. Minsu laughed. Actually, it was Jinho's idea. He saw me tinkering with the power couplings and asked if I thought we could improve the output. When I showed him my calculations, he told me to go ahead and try it. Yuna stared at the engine. Has your captain encouraged you to experiment, even though failure could have destroyed the ship? Well, we ran lots of simulations first, Minsu admitted. But yeah, Jin Ho trusts us to know our jobs. He says micromanaging good people just makes them worse at what they do. That afternoon, Yuna witnessed something that shook her understanding of leadership to its core. The ship's navigation system had developed a problem, and Jin Ho called all the senior crew to the bridge for a meeting. We've got two options, Jin Ho explained to the group. We can take the direct route home, which is faster, but takes us through the Kragan Nebula where sensors don't work well, or we can go around, which adds 3 days but keeps us in clear space. Yuna expected him to simply announce his decision, but instead he asked, "What does everyone think?" Taemin, the security officer, spoke up first. "The nebula makes me nervous. If we run into trouble in there, we'd be flying blind. But the longer route uses more fuel," added Minsu. "And we're already running low after the rescue mission." Hye-jin crossed her arms. "What if we compromise? Take the nebula route, but move slower and stay extra alert?" Jin-ho nodded thoughtfully. "Good point. So Young, you've been quiet. What's your take?" So Young, who handled communications, looked uncomfortable. "Sir, I hate to disagree, but I think we should take the safe route. The fuel shortage isn't critical yet, and we can always stop at Station Omega to refuel." Yuna watched in amazement as Jin-ho considered each opinion seriously. No one was punished for disagreeing. No one was forced to change their mind through mental coercion. They simply discussed the options like equals. "All right," Jin-ho finally said. "We'll take So Young's suggestion. Better to arrive safely than quickly." He turned to Minsu. "But start working on those fuel efficiency improvements you mentioned. We might need them." As the meeting ended, Yuna found herself questioning everything she'd been taught about power and control. These humans accomplished more through cooperation and trust than her people ever had through fear and mental domination. Maybe the Veltar way wasn't the only way after all. Jin-ho was sharing breakfast with Yuna in the ship's small dining area when every alarm on the bridge started screaming at once. The captain jumped up so fast his coffee spilled across the table. "Captain, to the bridge immediately." Hye-jin's voice crackled through the comm system, barely containing her panic. Jin-ho ran to the bridge with Yuna close behind him. What he saw on the main screen made his blood run cold. Dozens of massive ships hung in space like dark angels of death. Each vessel was at least 10 times larger than his patrol ship, their hulls gleaming with the same organic curves as Yuna's. "Crashed scout." "How many?" Jin-ho asked quietly. 47 ships, sir," Minsu reported, his voice shaking. "The biggest fleet I've ever seen. They appeared out of nowhere, just like they materialized from empty space. They're hailing us," So Young announced. "Audio and visual. Put it through." The main screen flickered and showed a Veltar woman who looked similar to Yuna, but older and much more intimidating. Her silver hair was braided with what looked like pieces of metal, and her black eyes held no warmth at all. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "I am Commander Zara of the Veltar Imperial Fleet. You will immediately return our lost scout and prepare for boarding. Any resistance will result in the complete destruction of your pathetic vessel." Jin-ho stepped forward, trying to look more confident than he felt. "This is Captain Jin-ho of the Earth vessel Harmony. Your scout was badly injured when we found her. We've been providing medical care and—" "Silence!" Zara's voice boomed through the bridge. "You dare speak to me as an equal? Your species crawled out of caves while we were conquering star systems." Behind Jin-ho, Yuna whispered urgently, "She's my commander. I was supposed to report back from my scouting mission 3 days ago." Zara's eyes found Yuna on the screen. "Scout Yuna, explain why you have not returned to your ship and why you stand freely beside these primitives instead of dominating their minds." Yuna stepped forward, her head bowed in submission. "Commander, my abilities failed against these humans. According to ancient law, I am bound to serve the one who proved immune to our power." The bridge fell completely silent. Commander Zara stared at the screen for several long seconds before throwing back her head and laughing. It was not a pleasant sound. "Ancient law? You claim these hairless apes could resist Veltar mental dominance? That's impossible, Scout. No species in the galaxy has ever been immune to our gifts. But, Commander, I tried multiple times. You tried and failed because you are weak. Zara's voice turned ice-cold. The fault lies with you, not with these creatures. I will not have my fleet's reputation damaged by your incompetence. Jinho felt anger rising in his chest. Now wait just a minute. Yuna isn't weak. She's been nothing but helpful and— The animal speaks again, Zara interrupted with disgust. Tell me, Primitive, do you even understand what you've stumbled into? The Veltar Empire has crushed civilizations that make your entire species look like insects. We have turned entire worlds into gardens of obedient servants. Then maybe it's time someone stood up to you, Jinho said quietly. The temperature on the bridge seemed to drop 10 degrees. Commander Zara leaned forward on her screen, her black eyes glittering with menace. You have exactly 1 hour to return Scout Yuna and surrender your vessel for inspection. If you refuse, we will demonstrate our power by destroying the human colony at Taeyang Station. 30,000 of your people will die to teach you the price of defying the Veltar Empire. The screen went black. Min Su was the first to break. The silence. Sir, Taeyang Station has been our home base for years. My sister lives there, my parents. Jinho looked around at his crew. Fear was written on every face, but so was determination. These weren't just military personnel following orders. They were people with families and friends who needed protecting. Options? He asked. We could run, Taemin suggested. Try to warn the station and evacuate as many people as possible. 47 ships, So Young said grimly. They'd catch us before we made it halfway there. Yuna spoke up quietly. There might be another way, but you won't like it. Yuna took a deep breath before explaining her plan. In Veltar culture, there's an ancient tradition called the Trials of Worth. If someone claims to have power over us, they can be challenged to prove it through 3 tests. It's rarely used anymore, but the law still exists. Jinho frowned. What kind of tests? Wisdom, strength, and leadership. If you succeed in all 3, Commander Zara would have to acknowledge your species as worthy of respect. She couldn't. Destroy the colony without losing face in front of her entire fleet. And if I fail? Yuna's voice dropped to a whisper. Then she has the right to do whatever she wants with your people. The bridge was quiet for a moment as everyone processed this information. Finally, Jinho nodded. It's better than no chance at all. How do I challenge her? 20 minutes later, Jinho found himself standing in the transport bay of Commander Zara's massive flagship. The Veltar ship was nothing like human vessels. The walls seemed to pulse with a faint blue light, and the air itself felt thick with mental energy that made his head ache slightly. Commander Zara stood waiting with a dozen of her officers. She looked even more intimidating in person, towering over Jinho by at least a foot. Her presence seemed to fill the entire room. So the Primitive wishes to play games with his betters, she said with amusement. Very well, I will honor the old ways if only to demonstrate your species' foolishness before I destroy you. She gestured to a large screen that appeared in the air. The first trial is wisdom. For 300 years, the Veltar Empire has struggled with resource distribution across our territories. Some worlds have too much food, others have too little. Some have excess materials, others face shortages. Our greatest minds have calculated thousands of solutions, but all result in someone being left without enough. The screen showed a complex map with hundreds of worlds, each marked with different colored symbols, representing various resources and needs. Numbers and equations floated around the display like a mathematician's nightmare. You have 1 hour to solve what our best strategists could not, Zara continued. Your primitive brain against the collective wisdom of the Veltar Empire. Jinho stared at the overwhelming display and felt his confidence cracking. This wasn't a problem that could be solved with courage or determination. This required actual intelligence, and he was just a patrol captain who'd barely graduated from the Naval Academy. Then he remembered something Yuna had told him about how his crew worked together. Maybe that was the key. Can I contact my ship? He asked. Zara laughed. Of course, call all the help you want. It will make your failure even more amusing. Jinho activated his communicator. So Young, I need you to look at something, and get Taemin up here too. When his crewmates materialized via transport beam, Commander Zara's expression shifted slightly. She had expected Jinho to struggle alone, not bring backup. This is the problem, Jinho explained quickly, showing them the resource map. We have an hour to figure out what Veltar strategists couldn't solve in 3 centuries. So Young studied the display for several minutes, her brow furrowed in concentration. The Veltar approach seems to focus on perfect mathematical distribution. Every world gets exactly what it needs, no more, no less. What's wrong with that? Taemin asked. It doesn't account for emergencies, natural disasters, or changing conditions, So Young replied. Look at this sector. If one world's crop fails, the entire region would collapse because there's no buffer. Jinho began to see the pattern. They're trying to create a perfect system, but perfect systems are fragile. Exactly, So Young nodded. What if instead of perfect distribution, we created surplus networks? Some worlds intentionally produce more than they need, others maintain emergency reserves. Taemin pointed to several military outposts on the map. These garrison worlds could serve as distribution hubs. They're already set up for rapid deployment. Working together, the 3 humans redesigned the entire resource network. Instead of the Veltar's rigid efficiency, they created a flexible system with multiple backup plans and emergency protocols. It wasn't mathematically perfect, but it was resilient and adaptable. When they finished with 10 minutes to spare, Commander Zara stared at their solution in silence. Her officers whispered among themselves in their alien language, clearly impressed. Interesting, Zara finally admitted. Your approach wastes resources on redundancy, but it would indeed prevent system-wide failures. She looked directly at Jinho. You passed the first trial, human, but do not let this small victory make you overconfident. The next test will not be so easily solved with your pack tactics. Commander Zara led them to what looked like a massive arena carved from black stone. The ceiling stretched so high it disappeared into darkness, and the walls were covered with weapons from dozens of different worlds. The air smelled of metal and old blood. The second trial is strength, Zara announced, her voice echoing through the chamber. In Veltar culture, only the strongest deserve to lead. The weak exist to serve the strong. This is the natural order of the universe. She gestured to a group of her warriors who stepped forward. Each one was at least 7 feet tall, with muscles that looked like they could crush steel. Their skin had a metallic sheen and their eyes glowed with an inner fire that spoke of countless battles won. Choose your champion, human, one of your people against one of mine in single combat. The winner proves which species is truly superior. Jinho looked at his small team. So Young was brilliant but hardly a fighter. Taemin had military training but was built more for strategy than brute force. He was about to step forward himself when a familiar voice spoke up behind him. Captain, request permission to represent humanity in this trial. Jinho turned to see Kyung-ho materializing from the transport beam. The ship's security chief must have been monitoring the situation from the Harmony. Kyung-ho wasn't the biggest human Jinho had ever seen, but he was solid, experienced, and had the calm confidence of someone who'd faced danger many times before. You don't have to do this, Jinho said quietly. Actually, I do, Kyung-ho replied. It's my job to protect the crew and the civilians at Taeyang Station. Besides, I have an idea. Commander Zara selected her champion, a massive warrior named Kresh, who looked like he could bench press a small spaceship. The Veltar observers gathered around the arena, their black eyes gleaming with anticipation. Combat begins when the gong sounds, Zara announced. Fight until one yields or falls. But instead of preparing for battle, Kyung-ho did something unexpected. He activated his communicator. Harmony, this is Kyung-ho. I need Min-soo, Hye-jin, and anyone else who can beam down right now. What are you doing? Zara demanded. This is single combat. You said to prove which species is stronger, Kyung-ho replied calmly. I'm going to show you what human strength really looks like. 6 more crew members from the Harmony materialized in the arena. They quickly formed a circle around Kyung-ho, each one watching a different direction. Kresh charged forward with a roar that shook the walls, but instead of meeting him head-on, Kyung-ho rolled to the side while Min-soo and Hye-jin created a distraction from the flanks. The Veltar warrior was incredibly strong and fast, but he was fighting like he expected individual combat. The humans moved like a pack of wolves, never attacking alone, always supporting each other. When Kresh focused on one person, two others would strike from different angles. When he tried to corner someone, the others would pull them to safety. "This is cheating," one of Zara's officers shouted. "The challenge was single combat." But Zara held up her hand for silence, watching intently as the battle continued. She was beginning to understand something important. Kresh grew frustrated as his overwhelming individual strength proved useless against coordinated teamwork. Every time he nearly defeated one human, the others would intervene. They shared equipment, covered each other's weaknesses, and turned each other's strengths. The turning point came when Kresh managed to corner Hyejin against the arena wall. His massive fist was inches from her face when every other human in the circle moved at once. They didn't attack him directly. Instead, they formed a protective barrier around their teammate, absorbing his blow with their combined strength. For the first time in his life, Kresh encountered something he couldn't overpower. People who absolutely refused to let one of their own fall alone. "Enough!" Zara called out. "The trial is complete." The arena fell silent as everyone waited for her judgment. "I understand now," Zara said slowly. "You showed me that human strength isn't about individual power. It's about refusing to let others fight alone." She looked at her own warriors, who had watched the battle with confusion. "My champion could defeat any one of you easily, but he could never defeat all of you together." She paused, and for the first time, her expression showed something other than contempt. "Your species is weak individually, but you become strong by caring for each other. This is unexpected." Commander Zara led them to a vast chamber that looked like a command center from a nightmare. Hundreds of Veltar officers stood in perfect rows, their heads bowed in submission. At the center of the room sat a throne-like chair surrounded by glowing screens and control panels. "The final trial is leadership," Zara announced, "the most important quality for any species that claims to be civilized." She gestured to her assembled officers. "Watch and learn how true leadership works." Zara walked to the throne and placed her hand on a crystal panel. Immediately, every Veltar in the room straightened like puppets on strings. Their eyes went blank, and they began moving in perfect synchronization, carrying out complex tasks without hesitation or question. "This is leadership," Zara said with pride. "Perfect obedience. No wasted time on discussion or debate. Every mind focused on a single goal. My will becomes their will." She turned to Jinho. "Now show me how your primitive species leads." Jinho looked around the room at the mindless Veltar officers and felt sick to his stomach. "I can't do what you just did. Humans don't have mind control abilities." "Then how do you make your people obey?" Zara asked, genuinely curious. "I don't make them do anything," Jinho replied. "I ask them." Zara laughed. "Ask them? What if they refuse? Then I listen to why they're refusing. Maybe they have a better idea." This seemed to confuse Zara more than anything else Jinho had said. "But how do you maintain order? How do you prevent chaos?" Instead of answering directly, Jinho activated his communicator. "Harmony, this is the captain. I need a full crew meeting. Everyone who can beam down, please do so." Within minutes, a dozen humans materialized in the chamber. Jinho's entire crew, including some faces that Zara hadn't seen before. Among them was Na Young, a young cadet who couldn't have been more than 19 years old. "All right, everyone," Jinho began. "We're in a tough situation. Commander Zara has threatened to destroy Taiyang Station unless we prove that humanity deserves to be treated with respect. This is the final test, and it's about leadership." He gestured to the mind-controlled Veltar officers. "Their way is total obedience through mental domination. I need to show them our way. So I'm asking all of you to help me demonstrate what human leadership looks like." Minsu raised his hand. "What do you need us to do, Captain?" "I need you to be yourselves," Jinho said simply. "Act like you normally would. Don't try to impress anyone or put on a show. Just be the crew I'm proud to serve with every day." Zara watched in fascination as the humans began talking among themselves. There was no rigid hierarchy, no fear of speaking out of turn. They treated Jinho with respect, but they also questioned his ideas, offered suggestions, and sometimes even disagreed with him openly. "So Young thinks we should try a different approach," Heejin said. She's worried that we're not explaining our position clearly enough. So Young might be right. Jinho nodded. What do you think, Taimin? I think we should trust So Young's judgment, Taimin replied. She understands communication better than any of us. This casual exchange of ideas and mutual respect seemed to mystify the Veltar commander. In her world, questioning a superior's decision was unthinkable. This is chaos, Zara muttered. How do you accomplish anything when everyone has an opinion? That's when Na Young stepped forward. The young cadet looked nervous, but determined as she faced the intimidating alien commander. Excuse me, ma'am, Na Young said politely. I know I'm just a cadet and probably shouldn't speak up, but I wanted to say something about Captain Jin Ho. Zara stared down at the young human. Speak, child. When I first joined this crew, I was terrified of making mistakes. I'd served under officers who punished any error, no matter how small. Na Young's voice grew stronger as she continued. But Captain Jin Ho is different. When I messed up my first week and nearly caused a reactor overload, he didn't yell at me or punish me. He sat down with me and helped me understand what went wrong and how to do better. She looked directly at Jin Ho, with obvious admiration. He doesn't lead us because he has to. He leads us because we want to follow him, because we trust him to make the right decisions, and we know he trusts us to do our jobs well. Kyung Ho nodded. The captain has never ordered me to risk my life. For the crew. But I would do it anyway because I believe in what we're doing and I believe in him. Same here, added Minsu. He encourages us to be creative, to try new things, to become better than we thought we could be. One by one, each crew member spoke up about Jin Ho's leadership style, not because they were ordered to, but because they genuinely wanted to. They talked about how he listened to their ideas, supported their growth, and treated them like valuable team members rather than disposable tools. Zara watched this display with growing amazement. These humans were showing loyalty that came from respect rather than fear, dedication that came from inspiration rather than compulsion. This is impossible, she whispered. Without mental control, how do you prevent rebellion? How do you maintain discipline? Jin Ho smiled. We don't prevent rebellion, Commander. We make sure our people never want to rebel in the first place. Commander Zara stood in silence for what felt like hours, her black eyes moving from one human to another. The Veltar officers around her remained frozen in their mind-controlled state, but Zara herself seemed to be fighting some kind of internal battle. You confuse me, she finally said to Jin Ho. Everything about your species should make you weak. You feel too much, think too chaotically, and refuse to dominate those beneath you. By every measure of civilization we understand, you should have destroyed yourselves long ago. Jin Ho stepped closer, his crew gathering supportively around him. Maybe your measures are wrong. Impossible, Zara snapped, but her voice lacked its earlier conviction. The Veltar way has conquered half the galaxy. Order through control, strength through dominance. This is how advanced civilizations survive. Is it though? So Young asked quietly. Because from what we've seen, your people seem pretty miserable. Zara's head whipped towards So Young. How dare you? She's right, Yuna interrupted, stepping forward from where she'd been watching near the edge of the room. Commander, when was the last time you felt genuine joy? When did you last laugh with friends or feel excited about discovering something new? Those are weaknesses, Zara replied automatically, but her voice wavered. Are they? Yuna continued. I've spent the last week with these humans, and I've learned more about myself and the universe than I did in 20 years of Veltar education. They don't suppress their emotions or their creativity, they use them. Zara looked around at her. Mind-controlled officers. But look at the efficiency. Look at the perfect order. No arguments, no delays, no mistakes. And no innovation, Minsu added. No new ideas, no growth. Just the same patterns repeated forever. When we solved your resource problem, Taimin said, we did it because we think differently than you do. Our chaotic minds saw solutions your orderly ones missed. Zara's composure began to crack. But without control, how do you prevent conflict? How do you stop the weak from dragging down the strong? We don't, Jin Ho said simply. We help the weak become strong. We lift each other up instead of stepping on each other. That's inefficient, Zara protested, but she sounded less certain. Is it? Hyejin asked. Your empire might be big, but is it happy? Are your people fulfilled? Do they create art, music, literature? Do they explore new ideas for the joy of learning? Zara opened her mouth to respond, then closed it. The truth was written on her face. The Veltar Empire was vast and powerful, but it was also sterile and cold. A galaxy of servants serving masters who served other masters, all the way up to an emperor who probably couldn't remember what it felt like to have a genuine thought. This is why I can't leave, Yuna said, her voice ringing clear through the chamber. Commander, I formally request release from my duties to the Veltar Empire. Zara stared at her subordinate in shock. Yuna, you can't be serious. You're asking to abandon your own people. I'm asking to be free, Yuna replied firmly. For the first time in my life, I've met people who don't want to control me or use me. They want to be my friends. They want to learn from me just as much as they want to teach me. She walked over to stand beside Jinho and his crew. I've discovered what it means to think my own thoughts, to make my own choices, to be valued for who I am rather than what I can do for others. But you're Veltar, Zara exclaimed. You're superior to these primitives. No, Yuna said quietly. I'm not superior to anyone, and that's what makes me equal to everyone. The words hit Zara like a physical blow. She staggered backward, her perfect composure finally cracking completely. You're choosing them over your own species? I'm choosing freedom over slavery, Yuna replied. Love over fear, growth over stagnation. She looked directly at her former commander. I'm choosing to be more than just a tool in someone else's hand. Zara looked around the chamber at her frozen officers, then at the animated, passionate faces of the humans. For the first time, she seemed to see the difference between obedience and loyalty, between control and leadership. You've won all 3 trials, she said slowly. Your species has proven itself worthy of respect. She paused, struggling with concepts that went against everything she'd been taught. But more than that, you've shown us something we lost long ago. You've shown us what it means to be truly alive. The mind-controlled Veltar officers suddenly blinked and looked around in confusion as Zara released her mental hold on them. Several of them stared at the humans with undisguised curiosity. Perhaps, Zara said carefully, it is time for the Veltar Empire to learn some new ways of thinking. 3 days later, Jinho stood on the observation deck of his ship, watching the massive Veltar fleet prepare to leave. Most of the alien vessels were already disappearing into hyperspace, their dark hulls vanishing like shadows at dawn. But not all of them were going home. Captain, Hyejin called from behind him, we've got a problem, a good problem, but still a problem. Jinho turned to see his medic grinning from ear to ear. What kind of good problem? 17 young Veltar have requested permission to stay aboard human ships. They want to learn more about our culture and way of life. Hyejin shook her head in amazement. Commander Zara approved it, but she looked like it physically hurt her to say yes. Jinho chuckled. Change is never easy, especially for people who have done things the same way for thousands of years. How are we going to handle 17 guests? Actually, most of them want to join other human crews throughout the sector, Yuna said, walking up to join the conversation. But 3 of them specifically asked to stay with us. Over the past few days, Yuna had become something different, fairer than anyone expected. She wasn't Jinho's servant or his prisoner. She wasn't even really a crew member in the traditional sense. She had become something entirely new, humanity's first alien cultural ambassador. The young ones are curious, Yuna continued. They've spent their whole lives being told what to think and how to act. The idea that they could make their own choices is both terrifying and exciting to them. What about you? Jinho asked. Any second thoughts about staying with us crazy humans? Yuna smiled, and it was a real smile, not the careful expression she'd worn when they first met. Captain, I've learned more about myself in the past week than I did in my entire life before. Why would I give that up? The next morning, the Harmony departed from the sector with its expanded crew. 3 young Veltar had joined them. Kess, barely an adult by her species' standards. Tren, a former military engineer fascinated by human technology, and Vix, who seemed most interested in human art and music. Jin-Ho found it amusing to watch his regular crew teaching the aliens about human customs. Min-Su spent hours explaining why humans like to personalize their workspaces with pictures and decorations. So Young taught them about human humor, though Veltar didn't seem to understand sarcasm at all. "It's not logical," Kes said during one of their cultural exchange sessions. "Why do humans say the opposite of what they mean?" "Because life isn't always logical," Na Young replied. "Sometimes we use humor to deal with difficult situations or to show affection in a playful way." The young Veltar looked confused but intrigued. "So sarcasm is a form of emotional protection." "Exactly," Na Young said, clearly pleased. "You're getting it." 2 weeks into their journey toward the unexplored regions beyond human space, Jin-Ho received a message that changed everything. It came from Earth Command, but the tone was completely different from their usual formal orders. "Captain Jin-Ho," the message began, "your actions with the Veltar fleet have opened up possibilities we never imagined. We're officially designating your ship as a diplomatic vessel. Your mission is to explore new worlds and make contact with other species, with Yuna serving as your cultural liaison officer." Jin-Ho shared the news with his crew during their evening meal. The reaction was mixed excitement and nervous anticipation. "So we're basically going to be professional first contact specialists?" Taemin asked. "Looks like it," Jin-Ho replied. "We'll be the team that meets new alien species and tries to understand them before anyone else does." "No pressure at all," Kyung-Ho muttered, but he was smiling. Yuna stood up at the table, looking around at all the faces that had become so familiar to her. "I want you all to know something. What we accomplished with my people wasn't just about passing some tests or saving a colony. We proved that different species can work together without one dominating the other." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "The galaxy is full of empires like the Veltar. Species that believe strength comes from controlling others. But we've shown there's another way. We've shown that true strength comes from helping each other become the best versions of ourselves." Tren, the young Veltar engineer, raised his hand shyly. "Does this mean we'll be meeting other species who might try to control us?" "Probably," Jin-Ho admitted. "But we'll face them the same way we faced your people, with respect, cooperation, and the belief that everyone deserves the chance to choose their own path." As the Harmony sailed deeper into unexplored space, its mixed crew of humans and Veltar worked side by side. They carried with them a simple but revolutionary message: that diversity makes us stronger, that cooperation beats domination, and that the best leaders are those who serve others rather than themselves. Behind them, word of their success was already spreading through both human space and the Veltar Empire. Other species were beginning to hear stories about the strange humans who won through kindness rather than conquest. The galaxy was about to discover what humanity had always known: that true strength comes not from standing above others but from standing together.